Hello and welcome back to the Under the Post podcast. My name's Simon Rathbone. We are lucky enough to be joined by Carlton AFLW star, recently turned Parramatta Eel in the NRLW, Brooke Walker. Brooke, I know you're joining us from your COVID isolation. Firstly, thanks for jumping on. How are you feeling?
No stress at all. Thank you very much for having me. I'm feeling much better today. I'm very excited with what's to come in terms of my sporting aspirations. But I'm just trying to take it one step at a time, because it's been a bit overwhelming the last few weeks and adjusting back to rugby league. But in saying that, I love a bit of a challenge, so I'm enjoying it so far.
And you've been certainly known for tackling sort of any challenge that comes your way. You know, you've done rugby sevens, AFLW, now NRLW. We'll talk about the upcoming NRLW season in a second, but I want to talk about a little bit about your journey, what sort of led you up to this point. So obviously growing up in Christchurch before you made the move to the Gold Coast. I know you've touched on before in the past about, you know, how you played rugby league as a junior, but due to the lack of opportunities as a girl, you fell into, you know, touch footy, rugby sevens. Was there a particular family member that sparked this broad love of sport? Was a mum, dad, a brother in the backyard that has started this whole journey off for you?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixture of all the people you said. It was my brother to begin with. Obviously, you know, getting dragged out of bed at 7 a.m. on Saturdays, wasn't too happy about it, but eventually fell in love with watching my brother play and sort of didn't really understand why I couldn't play, because I wasn't a certain age just yet. Once I reached that age, my dad was really hands-on with my with just any sporting opportunity that came my way, and he put his hand up to be one of my first coaches, and probably I think it might have been under eights. And then again, my mum has always been supportive with whatever sport I wanted. It probably wasn't the sport that she probably thought I was going to choose. I think she thought I'd go the netball path, but as soon as I fell in love with sort of rugby league, mum was there supporting me throughout the way. And all of my siblings were all very active in our early childhood with whatever sport. And that was sort of the sport that really engaged me. And growing up in New Zealand, I knew how big of a deal rugby union and rugby league was. So I couldn't really shy away from that opportunity. So yeah, it's been mum, dad, brothers, sisters. So yeah.
And I imagine once you moved to Gold Coast, I imagine in your high school days, was study sort of put to the side at all? Were you always running around the countryside going to different sporting events?
Yeah, I had to balance a bit of both, because my aspiration was to be a professional athlete. I wasn't too sure which avenue that would take me, but at the same time, I knew if that wasn't going to pan out, I also wanted to be a teacher. I had some awesome teachers growing up, so I decided to try split my time evenly excuse me, with both. So I continued my studies throughout high school and went to university after, while juggling rugby sevens, just so I had a sort of backup plan. And, you know, with any sport, it can be taken away from you from any moment or any injury. So just making sure I had sort of everything aligned so that I could be successful, whether that be within a career in teaching or within a career in sports. So I was very fortunate to have the sort of support around me in order to pursue both.
And I know personally for me, you know, I remember my grade 5 teacher sitting me down and saying, Simon, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, nope, I'm going to play cricket for Australia. And I was just so sure. And she was like, yeah, sure, mate, sure. And I was like, well, she's not taking me seriously. Like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then I quickly realized my complete lack of talent and drive to any sort of level. For you growing up, was it rugby league that you were like, this is the sport out of all of them that I wanted to pursue, or just did you want to be a sports star just across the board?
I think in my early days it was rugby league, until I realized that the opportunities weren't there. So during my life, it sort of chopped and changed as to what I could pursue sort of full time. But rugby league was definitely my earliest memory of falling in love with sport and falling in love with any game. And yeah, as I said, that sort of changed throughout my life. And then I fell in love with sort of touch football, because I thought that path would be the path that I would want sort of forever. Then realized again, you can't be full-time touch football. And then the Olympics announced that rugby sevens was going to be in the mix, and I knew that program would be full-time. And I sort of had transferable skills from touch football and from my early days in rugby league. So I was sort of familiar with I was sort of familiar with it. And when you're familiar with the sport, I think you get a little bit of confidence out of that straight away, instead of being shy or being nervous or whatever it might be, but sort of took those opportunities as it came and proved to be some pretty good decisions that I made.
And while obviously they are different codes, is that something that helps you when you are making that transition in between the different codes, whether it be obviously, your rugby league background growing up, so obviously aided in your rugby sevens, moving into the AFLW, was that something that was a little bit more of an adjustment? I imagine probably while, the fitness and the work that's gone into your AFLW seasons in the past is slightly different to the demands of rugby league. Was that sort of an easier transition for you, and the AFL was a bit more different for you?
Yeah, the transition to AFL was an interesting one. I came in with a little bit of kicking skill because in rugby league and in rugby sevens, I was a kicker. So I came in with a little bit of knowledge about kicking, but in terms of the game, growing up in Christchurch and growing up on the Gold Coast, AFL was sort of this really foreign concept to me. So once I started learning the game, I was just like, holy moly, I may have bitten off more than I could chew, but in saying that, I was really supported with the staff and with the development there. And again, when I was growing up, I think I was involved with a lot of sports. So like my fundamental movement patterns were sort of already established. I grew up playing badminton, so I think that helped early with the hand-eye coordination, I think. So very thankful that my parents got me into as much sport as they could drive me to, I guess, on weekends. So yeah, but in saying that though, the AFL challenge would, I would say, be the most sort of rewarding, because I came in knowing not much, but at this point in my life, in my AFL career, I feel like I have grown quite a lot, and I'm able to measure that compared to where I started. So yeah, it's been an interesting and definitely been a challenging adjustment, but I'm still learning. So yeah, fingers crossed that I continue to learn, continue to develop. But it was a tough one, AFL to challenge into. And like you said, the fitness demands were a bit different as well. Like I came from touch football and rugby sevens, where you're focusing a lot on sort of the anaerobic threshold rather than the aerobic. So just getting used to running more than sort of 400, 500 meters in one goes was very challenging, but getting better at it now, and I'm able to transfer sort of my speed and agility into the AFL game, which has been awesome.
And before we talk about your NRLW, just a little bit on your time with Carlton. Obviously, your plan is to return to them at the end of the NRLW season, finish out the season with them this year. How much has it meant to be able to play for such a historic club like Carlton, and just sort of the opportunities that's given you?
Yeah, I could not be more thankful and grateful for the support that Carlton have given me. They took a punt on me transitioning from sevens to AFL. And then they were absolutely rapt to see that I had this NRLW opportunity. And although it means that I'm going to miss out on the first first 3 rounds of the 3 to 4 rounds of the AFLW, they knew how much this meant to me. As I said to them, it was a dream of little Brooke, and they were all very hands-on, willing to help me out and achieve that dream. So yeah, I'm very, very thankful to be contracted by Carlton, for them to allow me this opportunity. And as you said, it is a very historic club. I'm blown away by how professional the club is and how integrated the men's and women's programs are. So if I could take anything away from that, it would be trying to sort of take these learnings into sort of a new code and be able to keep developing in that regard.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you'll be the first player to actively juggle AFLW and NRLW commitments. I know, knowing you and your history, you'll be giving 100% to both clubs when you're playing for the Eels or when you return to Carlton. Is that a challenge you're sort of ready to embrace?
Yeah, it is a huge challenge. Both clubs have been really awesome in terms of dealing with sort of the training load. So Eels and Carlton have been sort of in contact with high performance about what I'm getting out of both sessions and how to manage both and how to integrate aspects of both. Just so that when I return back to AFLW, that I'm still in good shape. And again, coming to NRLW, the high performance at Carlton have been really understanding of the demands of the game. And then everyone behind the scenes have been really awesome with their communication with each other in terms of Eels and Carlton, which has made the move a lot smoother so that everyone's on the same page, whether that's medical or whether that's high performance or whether that's sort of just well-being as well. They've all been very integrated with each other. But yeah, I'm very excited for what's to come. At the moment, now that I've had my last session with Carlton, my primary focus will be Eels. So I'll be giving 100% of my dedication and commitment to Eels. And then once I finish my season with Eels, I'll head back to AFLW, and then that'll switch again. My primary focus will then be AFLW. But yeah, it is a bit of a whirlwind at the moment. I'm just wrapping my head around it. I've made lots of notes in my phone about what I need to do and how best to do them and who to approach and things like that. So that I'm on the front foot going forward.
It's obviously a really special weekend in rugby league at the moment, women in league round across Australia. How much does it mean for you? You know, if you could go back to young Brooke growing up playing rugby league, for the fact that you now have the chance to play rugby league at the highest level, just what does that mean to you as a player?
Oh, it means the absolute world to me. I think it's something that's really special to me, being able to have sort of these opportunities as a female in sport. We've struggled for a very long time with having these sort of opportunities, and now that they're here, I think young Brooke would be crying right now, knowing that I'm sort of achieving something that I sort of gave up on because I didn't see the opportunities. And in saying that, I've had so many strong female excuse me, so many strong female figures in my life to be able to pursue this opportunity. I mean, remember early in my rugby sevens days, I was able to cross paths with Tani Norris, who's an established NRLW coach. And even in Victoria, Tiana Carney for the Burleigh Bears as well has had a huge impact on me taking this opportunity as well. And in saying that, all the staff at the Grange Peter 12 College, the female staff there like Trisha O'Neill, Kendall Clark, Ash Sumai have been massive advocates for women in sport, and in particular, they've been really supportive in my development and wanting to pursue this opportunity, even though it might make their work at school a little bit harder. But yeah, these strong women in my life have had a massive impact, and I'm really, really thankful that the NRL does have such a round like this to appreciate those sort of figures. And then again, there's my mum and there's my sisters as well, who I think this round means quite a big deal to them, because of all the things that they've done in order to help anyone, or help me in particular, pursue these opportunities that we now have.
I know you said you've been utilizing the notes in your phone. Are you much of a goal setter? Like, whether it be tackling a new code or a new season, do you write down your goals, or do you just have certain milestones you want to personally achieve throughout the seasons to keep pushing you to that next level?
Yeah, I have got a few goals on my phone. They're very little goals, and they require just a little bit of extra time before training. So just making sure that I'm sort of touching base with any coaches that I can, and so I can sort of develop as quickly as I can. I know it's such a short preseason, and these goals will sort of help me and help the team in the long run. So yeah, I'm very organized with that. I think it's because I've been surrounded in such professional programs like the Rugby Sevens program and the AFLW program, to make sure you go in to a new club knowing that you have a sort of thirst for improving and developing, and making sure that you're putting in extra time in order to sort of fast track your development so that you're not letting anyone down. I think that's always been sort of a huge thing of mine, to be able to make sure that I'm taking any opportunity I can to sort of improve.
Yeah. And so what's your upcoming goals for the NRLW season? I'm assuming you'll be looking for a spot in that Eels spine. Yeah.
It's very competitive at the Eels. So a couple of my goals are sort of just to learn every single one of the plays so far. And I've just wrapped my head around that, which has been awesome. And I've been able to touch base with a couple of the other players who I'm living with in Sydney. And we sort of just analyze games and go through which plays which. And then looking on past that, just making sure that obviously as a half, I'm a bit smaller. So making sure that I have my tackle tech down pat. Obviously it's changed over the time of my sporting career. Rugby sevens, sort of low tackles AFL sort of a little bit higher. So now I'm going to have to figure out what is best going forward for NRLW. And I think if I can sort of nail that and put myself in good stead in terms of contact, I think that'll benefit me a lot, being sort of a smaller player. So I've got little goals like that. So I've got the tackling, even sort of kicking, just tactical kicking. I know kicking is such a underrated game in NRLW, so I just want to keep focusing on that, and then just making sure I'm learning the play so that I can communicate effectively with everyone around me, because we'll obviously have to use my voice quite a bit out on the field and setting up plays and things like that. So yeah.
Well, clearly the Eels have got a pretty handy player if you're Harvey Norman National Championships from last year or anything to go by. Can you tell us a little bit about how that sort of came about? I know you played the one game for Werribee and then went up to the National Championships, and you took to it like to a duck to water, really.
That was one of the most fun tournaments I've played in my sporting careers. I went in obviously with a little bit of knowledge about rugby league from when I was younger, but the way that those girls in the NRL, in the Vic State team embraced me and helped me, I'll always be thankful for. That tournament, it was a lot of fun, but I learned a lot about myself during that tournament, just what I need to improve on, what needs more focus, and things like that. But it was a really fun tournament, and it was a tournament that I definitely can see that younger players coming up can get their name out. Sort of hoping for people like Jade and Kirsty, who have taken the Vic State Champs route with under 19s. Hopefully they stick with it, and the younger Victorian players stick with that, because that is how my name got out. That is how I was able to sort of showcase my skills, and there's no sort of better opportunity coming from Victoria than, I think, going through that pathway. But yeah, I had an awesome time with those girls, and those girls are still some of my really good friends, and yeah, met lots of awesome staff within the NRL Vic program, staff that I still see around as well. So yeah, I'm very, very thankful for that opportunity and to be chosen, even though I had limited experience.
Now, there's obviously still a lot of room for the women's game to grow, not only in rugby league, AFLW as well, but especially on the rugby league side. From, like you said, you've touched on growing up, the limited opportunities that a lot of female athletes had, to now where, we've got the likes of the NRLW competition. In Victoria, the Melbourne Storm really recently announced their Lisa Fiola under-17s side that'll take part in September later this year. For those young girls growing up, what's any bit of advice you could give them to try and make sure they grab these opportunities with both hands and make the most of them, as these pathways are starting to become more and more clear for these young athletes around Victoria?
Yeah, I think, having established pathways for these young female athletes is just incredible. I mean, if I was a young female athlete, I would try and follow the pathway all the way up to the NRLW, because I know that NRL Vic is really, really established a pathway now. And to see this under 17 competition, I feel like the sort of 15 to 17 age group is where you sort of lose the female athletes to other sports, whether that's AFLW or rugby union. But now that this competition has been established, I think that if you're under 15, you should just follow the pathway up. You won't miss out on any rugby league during that period of time, and then you can, once you've graduated that under 17s age group, it's not long until you can be playing open. So it's magnificent to see that this pathway is there for these young girls. I know at my school, the Grange Peter 12 College, there's a lot of girls in that age group who end up sort of veering towards rugby union or touch football, because there's nothing sort of there for them that's outside of school. But now there is. I'm sure I'll be encouraging as many female athletes that I know within rugby league to stick with the sport, because if you follow the pathways all the way through, and if you're dedicated, and if you really have a drive to sort of want to be an NRLW contracted player, then I think this pathway is absolutely perfect for them.
Amazing. Thanks, Brooke. Well, look, best of luck for the rest of the year with the upcoming NRLW season and, of course, the AFLW season at the end of that, and for the rest of 2022. I appreciate you jumping on and joining us under some testing circumstances, and best of luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much for having me today, Simon.